And then, did you share your screen? God, you never get it. Yeah.
Okay. Can everybody see that? Give me one there.
I can see it.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so just to echo Luke's sentiments that what I'm about to show you isn't ready to be plugged in today to the process. In fact, it'll be implemented when, at the earliest, when the season, possibly a week or two after that, just based on some refinement and the insistence on kind of our part that this be refined a bit more rather than, dumping it into the system and then having to go back and forth multiple times and have changes constantly occur. So we're trying to get it to a good point with all the project architects to where they can have their hands on it for a little bit, so they don't want to change it, after a month of us using it. So that said, again, it's kind of a method of standardizing our notes, but it's also kind of a potential future for standardizing the way we identify each of our families. So, for example, each family may eventually have a unique number. I keep calling them SKU numbers, not to make us sound like Walmart, but it's the concept, I guess. And then it would kind of refer to a note database of which you just continually, all you have to do is tag the object and it comes up with a number, which would then be trackable through LoRa, or our inventory or procurement would have that same kind of document. So again, we looked at, but what we're going to show you today, Nicole and I have been working on a project called STY, which is a giant kind of ski lodge out in Tahoe, almost 6,000 square feet, has 6 mods, a site-built garage below a mod, site-built lower level sitting below a mod. So it's pretty intense, and we skipped schematic design. So we had about 8 weeks to do full state set of drawings. And has gable roofs with trusses. So it is no longer a standard product. Hence the need to really, really make everything efficient that can be efficient, let's just say that. So we were looking back at some of the old, trying to identify kind of the common notes from set to set. And again, this would be the thing that the project architects need to refine, but it's going to be kind of the notes that are always seen and in our drawings, kind of the, let's just say, site built or site contractor to provide, or things like that. Certainly can be more complex than that, but so let me just get into what I'm talking about here. So,
so this isn't that project that you're talking about. This is the seed model in process, but we've taken the Keynote file from that and brought it in here as a way to test it out and refine it. So this looks like a standard balance because it is a standard balance.
Yes. I'll share you the viewing for disaster, the Tahoe project. So we know a lot about kind of tagging now. We're getting more into material tags, which I think is a pretty savvy method. Tagging by category with some of our plumbing fixtures and other things that we're using. But when you look over to the right here, this is the Keynote system. So there's 3 types of Keynotes. First is element-based, which is basically you can plug a Keynote into an element itself, right? So a wall could have a Keynote that says, exterior wall type, and that tag is specific to that element, similar to like tag by category or material tag. And you can actually start to do material Keynote, which we haven't yet deciphered what the difference between material Keynote and material tag is. obviously there's a difference, but which one to use, we don't quite know yet. What we've been using is a user keynote, which essentially is a generic note that doesn't attach itself to an object. Yet you still have to actually select an object to get that note to place. It's not just a thing floating out in space. It's kind of somewhat attached to an object. So I'm just going to show you how we place those and show you kind of, we'll start here and then kind of move backwards to the database of notes. So Revit gives you, out of the box, a standard set of keynotes that are based on kind of the conventional construction specification system, or CSI. So you would see kind of like a long list of existing conditions, steel, other materials, basically the whole list of building systems that you can either use that, which would typically in a conventional project you would relate those to a full spec book. In our case, we decided to kind of customize that, and I'll show you how we did that in a minute. But just to show you how to place the note, one thing too to show you how we've organized these, we kind of thought that all these common notes that we're coming together with essentially differed by view type or plan to elevation to section, rather than having just one big glob of notes that you have to choose from. This is certainly also not refined, right? I mean, this may be based on sheet type. Maybe they begin to become numbered by A100, A200, and those are coordinated with that sheet. But for now, this is the way we just used it, again, because we had a couple days to put all the notes on the sheets. So as you see, let's just say, an example here of picking a wall, but see the level of kind of notes that we have going on. Let's see which one's good here. I'm just going to call it that for the sake of a note. So that's what the note then looks like, right? And again, it's not attached to this object. It doesn't change the walls, any information in the wall. It just has a placement in this set. So the good thing about this is that obviously you manage that through the Keynote file, which is basically, we'll show you an Excel file that's transferred by a text file. And anything that changes within that note, you only have to do it once, which is kind of the drive. That's what we're all looking to do here. So from there, let's see. Sorry, I haven't created a schedule yet. But basically, you schedule the keynotes. Did you create that yet?
No, it's already in there. Yeah, so if you, what are we on here? Entry-level plan. So then on your sheet, if you, the Keynote system, I think it automatically creates this Keynote Legend, which you can just drag on your sheet, and then whatever you had placed in the drawing, that note shows up. And so it's only the notes that you place on the drawing in this sheet will show up on this sheet. So if we added any more, they would add to this Keynote list. Over this guy, put that on there. Pick something random, and then it'll add to this. And these can move independently. So you can move this around your sheet to wherever you might need to go to change it. Pretty easy to use once you have it on there. Are you all set with what you
Well, yeah. So I mean, that's kind of, so the other idea is that Nicole said this, but the good thing that this does is it also, I think we've all kind of gone through the pains of having to figure out how to filter schedules in bathrooms or in on some of our elevations by calling out certain rooms that they're attached to, or exterior versus interior. is that an instance ID filter? Is that a call a code filter? And what the keynoting does is literally just it does it by sheet rather than by view specific. So if I place this Keynote Legend on another plan, let's just do that. It's going to be blank because I haven't placed any other notes on that sheet. Right. So once I start to populate this drawing, that would begin to populate as well, which again saves any filtering. You only have one. It's only specific to that sheet, so you don't have to do it more than once. Okay, so now I hope that's clear. Again, this is a brush over as to the direction that we're moving in. The library needs to be beefed up, and the process needs to be refined a little bit. But to move backwards a bit to show you just kind of the inner workings of this, basically what this Keynote Legend or these keynotes refer to, again, is a text file, which comes directly from an Excel file. So what you're seeing here is, let me just make sure. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where Luke had this saved. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So it's important to note that, and you'll see in here that formatting is kind of crucial to the Excel file because the keynotes won't show up correctly in the when you place them in terms of the number related to the note and so on. But this is where you start to see the potential for, say, a project architect managing this keynote list per project. So it could be, something like if there's a bunch of customizations to the project, which see it on here, but maybe Luke was kind of suggesting even. What's that?
I think you may have opened the wrong one, actually. It hasn't. They're working on the rail lines.
We're about to be run over.
Luke basically tied in the idea that maybe when we get the SCRF and which that process may be changing, but we begin to put in the project customizations as separately noted or separately organized keynotes. So then we can begin to maybe track that a little better also. But you see they're basically categorized, right? So we've got the section notes, all their numbers. This tab over basically this column over here then refers to this section. So the way it's organized is pretty important. If I were to delete that, this note would then be able to read it. Which is why it's probably better to have one person managing it rather than everyone on every project doing it separately. Things could go haywire with that. But it's also important that we get all the more important kind of standard notes in so that, then everything that's custom is custom and we don't have to worry about adding more standard notes. So basically all you do is just export this as a text file, which I think we all know how to do. And it looks like this. So this is what the Revit model actually references. Again, you don't want to mess with this, because even a space or a tab or anything in here will then break the path essentially, and make the note look different than any other one. So, okay, so that's really the broad kind of broad-reaching concept behind it. Again, the goal is to make sure we're all, first of all doing the same thing when it comes to noting and kind of our standards, but also making us a little bit more efficient, kind of relieving some of the what ifs, or I don't know what to do in this case. Well, hopefully this will start to eliminate that part of it, part of our process at least. So does anyone have questions on that? I've kind of like slaughtered that process a little bit here, but the idea is there. Does anyone have thoughts? Has anyone ever used it before?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you load in multiple Keynote text files? No?
Just close from that one.
Just one.
Just one. So we couldn't, say, have like a Blue Standard library of notes, and then you have your custom keynotes for your specific project.
Correct, but you can edit this, put them in this file, put it in your project file,
right?
And then add any customizations to it, so you would still have it, and then just tell it to run.
So you start with the Blue Standard,
yeah,
and then you add whatever you need.
I would assume every project would then have their own kind of like underscore name file.
Yeah.
That
if we decide to keep to use this to keep the project customization, maybe you open the just place a keynote and show the different groupings. All right. Yeah, so I think what we would probably do is have several groups of what are our standard keynotes, and then below that have whatever the custom keynotes are for the project. So like Andrew was saying, you would take the standard keynote file, copy it into your folder for your project. If we keep our project customization files on one custom group, another maybe custom notes for that project is on another custom group. So hopefully we would have groups that are standard that you never mess with, and groups that are custom for projects you do whatever.
Yeah. Do we have notes that are specific to the different products that are still like Blue Standard notes, but would like cause the need for a different Blue Standard Keynote file for every product?
We would just make another group for it.
Okay.
We could maintain it as separate files, but then any notes which aren't product specific, we'd have to use one of those.
That could change anytime it was changed.
All of this sort of organization is a little bit contingent on what the project architects want to do and how they want to maintain the notes and have them organized. But having said that, for those of you project designers which are familiar with notes, and you've written the same note 20 times on the 20 projects that you worked on, I'm talking to you, Walt, Sam. If you want to have input on or think you know what all of the standard notes are, it's a lot easier, I've found, to present something to the PAs to get revised rather than saying, hey guys, can you create a keynote file, because that's not going to happen. So I think a good process would be we as project designers look at this keynote file, make any suggestions, talk about it amongst ourselves, or make those changes, and then present the file to the project architect and say, this is what we think would be useful. Would you guys weigh in so that we can get input and standardize it? And then once we do that, then we can roll it out.
Hey Luke, does the Keynote file need to travel with the Revit file for it to display properly?
No, you just set in, Andrew, you show how to select the Keynote file. In your annotation tab under Keynote settings, you just tell it where the Keynote file is. It's sort of like telling it where the shared parameter file is, which is why I put it in the shared parameter folder. But yeah, if we decide not to put project custom Keynote and just have a standard Keynote file, which we use for all projects, I would say keeping it in a standard place in the Revit library on the S drive, and then just saying to your Revit project, this is the Keynote file I use. I think that would be the best way to handle it.
So whenever we load a project, it is also looking at this text file on the server to display the note in the sheet. So like if I open a project and I'm like at home and I'm not connected to the server, is it going to display correctly?
I'm not sure if it connects to display or only when you're placing the keynote. Do you know, Andrew?
I believe it's similar to when you load a family. Then, you know, it's not, you're not reading that family as you would like an XREF, right? That family then
it's in the file, right?
Becomes part of the project. Yeah. So I think the reference that you're seeing here is only for reloading. I hope. We haven't tested that, I guess, but I'm pretty sure that it should be then part of the project after you've loaded it once. That's a good question, though.
So along the same lines, if we're saying that, and I might have misinterpreted, but if we're saying that, you know, project-specific keynotes are just done inside the project, but the standard file changes, and we know we need to re-upload it to the file, does it overwrite the project-specific one?
I think we would have to not copy the entire file up, but only we would be copying rows from one Excel file to the next. So if we break out a keynote file for each project as the project comes in, then anything that does change to the standard you would have to change in the project-specific one, or you will overwrite the separate.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's why I was suggesting having groups within the keynote file which don't change. But if you do have to, if we do break off a custom one per project, you would have to copy all of the rows which relate to a specific group over to the keynote file.
Defined by tabs or just sections in one individual tab?
They are defined by, so there's 3 columns in the keynote file. To open it for me to remember which is which. So I think the third file, the one on the right, is the designation of the group that it's part of. So it's not separated by sheet. There's no like section marker in the file. I think it's just that third column.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a parent category, which like we had called section, and then that's tied with the SC tag, and you put that SC tag at the end, and it keeps everything under the section category.
Yeah, so you see here at the top it says PC on the left, project customizations, and then it's blank in the third column. And then all of the third columns below that say PC. That means that all of those rows are a part of the project customization.
And the reason why these all have a prefix of a letter in front of them is because you can't have the same number appear twice within the drawings. You have to make each keynote its own unique tag, or else you get errors.
Can you do subgroups? Is there a way? No?
Yeah. Yep.
You can? How do you do that?
I don't know how to write it in, but when you open up the out-of-the-box Revit Keynote file, it's got, like, you know, again, building construction, then it goes down to, like, product, however the CSI format is organized, and it's got kind of a tree of organization that has different items in each category.
Okay.
You can, but
If I remember correctly, like see right here, you have SC as the category section notes, and then the next keynote references SC in the third column over. Essentially, let's say you wanted to make subheadings of S01, you would just make a new line with a tag in the first column, put the description, and then where the SC is, you put S01. So
gotcha.
You just treat the next group.
It just keeps going down the tree, if I'm not mistaken.
That would make sense given the way that it's set up.
Has anybody looked at using Material Keynote? The one thing I do know is that it will do, the nice thing it does that material tags don't do is if you have a schedule, it'll only show the ones on that sheet.
Sure.
And I know sometimes the project architect, that's been a pet peeve, but I don't know if that's something that.
So I think this was the problem with it. Material Keynote also referenced the main Keynote file, which is fine. But I think in the way that we've been organizing the schedules on the sheets is that material schedule is separate from note schedules, right? So in this case, it would be lumped in with that entire Keynote schedule. And you could change the headings and have it be like a separate line item that starts, but yeah. Plus,
because you can put it all in that Excel file. Like you can use the same formatting in the Excel file, and then just place a keynote within your material.
One question I have too is based on the, like essentially, from what I understand, what's going on is it's prompting you for the material keynote to use because it doesn't have one assigned to it. If we assign the keynotes ahead of time in the material library, would it solve that issue? And yeah, exactly, right there.
Yeah, right now we're using the keynote field in the materials as a filtering mechanism for our schedules, which will, won't work if we try to use keynote. So we sort of co-opted that standard for now. But I think you bring up, well, first of all, I think it will do that if you already have it in the material. If you have the keynote label and it references an external file and brings in that description.
Right.
But that brings up a really interesting point about the way that Keynote works. So we were deciding when we first switched over to Revit and we're figuring out how to set things up. I looked at using Keynote and talked about it with a few designers, and we shied away from it at first because it was a little bit concerning for things like materials, and more specifically trying to tag elements like windows, that the information we were trying to show was being stored in an external text file rather than being stored in the family itself. And so I think if we are good about modifying our material library and setting up the keynotes and having the name of the material and the keynote that it's referencing in the text file be the same, then we don't have any conflict. The danger is that you have, white AZEC _ 1 by 10 with a keynote that references something which is clear cedar in the text file. And so you're sort of containing your information in two places, and those two places can conflict. And so I think it's riskier for things where you are trying to call out a spec. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but I think the coordination between what is in the model and the thing that is being referenced in the text file has to be managed. Right? Whereas it seems like a no-brainer for things like user keynotes, which are just sort of general notes for the project, and you're not trying to call out a specific thing in the model.
Yeah. Well, because that's the one thing I wasn't sure about is I think my understanding of the way the material keynotes works, like if you already have the keynote or the keynote mark set in the materials library, you don't even have to touch the text file.
Right. That's true.
So, because already I know the problem you were saying where you specify material but the tag says something else because the parameter field is wrong, or then in the suggested case the keynote field is wrong. Like every once in a while I still run into that because we need to make a new, there's a custom tile spec on a project, so we start with an existing Walker-Zanger tile and then change the fields, but we missed the description field, so it's like the Revit material set is right, but the called out one is wrong. So I feel like it's still something that happens every now and then anyway. But
yeah, that's true.
I don't know if it's like necessarily a lot better than one or another, but I could see at least then I don't know. I guess it doesn't really all change that much. The biggest benefit I could see it happening is you eliminate the materials that aren't present on a sheet.
I think that filtering mechanism, like most objects, you can filter by room, and so it's not too important for an object schedule.
Yeah.
And we sort of use that, set instance ID to hide. That's a way that you can filter those sorts of things out of an object schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know the difficulty with material schedule is that you can't filter by sheet, and Keynote does take care of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, and maybe going through our material library once with our material or our Keynote file, which contains materials, and just making sure all of that's up to date and making sure everybody uses standard materials. Probably not that much more dangerous than using
just for the method of tagging note, if you put the materials in the Keynote, it's just so easy to go tag all of my materials. Are you saying that we're going to keep them in Keynote or keep them in tag or material?
I think.
Tagging all windows.
Well, that's why I was saying a distinction between tagging. Well, the three keynotes are tag element, tag material, and user keynote. And so I think we're saying that the user keynote, which is just sort of general project notes, we're definitely going to use keynotes for. Mm-hmm. And I think it's still a bit of an open discussion right now as to whether we switch over to keynotes for using materials. I don't think we would want to switch to keynotes for tagging of objects like, sorts of things. I think those should always be tagged. Yeah. Materials, I'm sort of on the fence.
Yeah.
About.
I don't know if there's too any. Like we were looking at the keynote, there was keynote by object. Like I don't know if there's any situations where those are beneficial, or element rather. If any of those are beneficial to us, like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like on the building exterior, sometimes like vents, like. But we always call those out with a leader or downspouts or things like that. Although I don't know, maybe those are.
I mean, I put those as part of that larger Keynote.
Okay.
I mean, for our project, so they're part of like the elevation notes, but maybe that's not the right place for them. Maybe it's more of an element thing. And ours is quick and dirty.
Yeah, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you had something like a downspout and you did have a number assigned with that in the keynoting list, like you can, the first time you tag it, you can keynote by element, pick the downspout keynote from the text file, and then every downspout you tag will give you the same note, correct?
Yeah, that's the main difference between the element keynote and the user keynote. Mm-hmm. That if you tag something with the user keynote, the object sort of doesn't know that it's been tagged. Like it doesn't assign a key. I think it's called the key value. Is the EO1, EO2? I think that's called the key value.
Yeah.
It doesn't assign a key value to the element. Okay. But you can tag the same type again and tag it with something totally different. Whereas with an element keynote, it actually tags. It inputs a value into the keynote field for that element. Yeah, like so that. Then if you tag it a second time, it'll still remember that because it's being stored in a type parameter. Yeah. So that's the difference. User keynote doesn't store anything in the object, and the element and material keynotes do store something either in the element or the material. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think that's a huge time saver for us too. Like,
I could also see that being really useful in interior elevations. Just having the same, like the way we use instance IDs to tag plumbing fixtures and things like that. Like you're going to have the same faucet in, like say you have the same standard faucet in all your bathrooms, it would have the same element keynote tag in all the elevations, regardless of where it shows up in that schedule list.
Well, that actually brings up that's sort of another way of doing what I've heard proposed, which I think is a good idea, is instead of using instance ID, using call-out code for those sorts of things so that we have a consistent call-out code between projects. The downside to that is you won't have your schedule for your bathroom fixtures. It won't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll say 5, 10, 112, 64. Yeah. So I think rather than sort of reverse engineering a keynote to work like a tag, you should just use a tag which is a type parameter rather than but again, that's another question that I feel like we as, or you guys, I'm not a project designer, sorry, I didn't mean to. You wonderful project designers should sort of come to a consensus over, how do we want to do it? Is it important that we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or is it okay that we skip around to numbers as a way to maintain consistency between projects? Or do you really want the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 And again, eventually I feel like that's a project architect drawing standard question, but I feel like we should come up with, this is how it's going to, excuse me, you guys should come up with how you feel it's going to help you best benefit your process, and then propose that as a drawing standard change and get that approved by the project architect. I'm more than happy to do it any way that you want, but I know that that is going to be probably the best process for getting these sorts of things changed and getting these things implemented.
I'm all for consistency.
Yeah. So the one thing is, I see the argument on both sides. Like seeing something as a client 5, 10, 128, or it's confusing, but at the same time, it takes us a long time to do those interior elevations by that method.
And especially if they're kind of coded, like the way the keynotes are coded, where they start with like a yes for plumbing fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So then there will be some amount of logic. It really matters that they're a bit out of order.
Yeah.
And with
Could people from other offices weigh in on this if you're still listening?
I don't think the numbering matters for me anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I like the idea that if it's like a more of a code, then the numbering doesn't matter as much as opposed to just having 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's like T1, T2, or if it's a plumbing fixture or something else. If we have a code that's consistent too, then it's like our color codes for windows and doors. I think that's, I agree with the consistency is better than just having them numbered in sequence.
Do you think that would be okay for materials also, so that we have a consistent?
Yeah, I think so.
All-out code as well?
Yeah, for the same reasons, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Carl. I agree. I think we're doing it with windows and doors. It actually ends up being more confusing in the long run not to have a consistent code, because in the stream of conversation between you and the PMs or the clients, you can just keep on referring to the same number. I realize it might not be in an order on a list, but that's, to me, not as important.
Okay.
And you can print or you can generate a master Keynote Legend that has every keynote that was used in the project, and I believe that can be filtered to maybe just your plumbing fixture, so you can see your entire list of plumbing fixtures, the entire project, and see the codes for them all in one place.
Yeah, actually, Andrew, if you go down to the project customization legend, I think I have that one, and go into the filters. I think that key value begins with C, so that's how I'm filtering it to only show the customization. So you can do that basically for each group. You could say, because if we started with a consistent code, that's how you could filter the schedule to show only the keynotes from a specific group in a schedule, or a legend rather.
There's no place yet.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are used.
Right. There you go. Yeah.
I mean, what's nice about this too is that you can go back and forth between the text or the key value, because I think there are a lot of examples where you don't necessarily want to see the key value. Like this example here, you probably want to see the text on these kind of things. But then when we go to an interior elevation, then you can switch back to showing. You can go back to showing just the code itself.
Yeah, it's just a different type of tag. So
right.
It's the same family, but it's showing one or the other. So yeah, like Andrew's showing, just to change it, you just select the keynote tag and change the type to switch whether it shows the code or the text.
Yeah, that's an easy change.
All right. Well, I've got a handful of things that I'm talking to PAs about, specifically regarding seed models, also about this keynoting stuff. I'll bring up the the material and fixture tagging stuff that you guys brought up. And for those of you, I think Claire sent out an email recently about seed models. I'm almost done sort of defining the standard on the first one that I've been working on. It's a balance, so if any of you are starting balance projects, let me know and I'll roll that out to you with a couple of caveats. But this also means that we can start making the other seed models. There's still a couple things that need to be worked out, but it's nothing that would keep us from starting to develop those. So if you guys are interested and willing, when you have time, or if you can make time, I would love to show people what I've done and train them how to make the next ones. And I know all of you wonderful project designers would appreciate having those rather than starting from full projects which you have to back things out of. So we're getting to look for that in the very, very near future. And please help me.
You can work that out. Okay.
All right. I think, as always, if anybody has any questions, feel free to bring them up. But if not, I think we covered the keynotes and talked about a couple of other things related. And I feel like that was really productive. And thank you for your feedback. All right, then. Hi, guys.
Thanks, Luke. See you. Presenting the keynotes. I was here from the beginning.
Oh, this is Andrew and Nicole in Ann Arbor.
Hey, guys. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, sure.